Hypers in chat, if you have a job and you hate it, that's going to be roughly everybody in chat who has a job. Most people hate having to work. Hell, even I, who have my dream job. This is literally my dream job. Like, I dreamed about having this job when I was like a 10-year-old, okay? Like, this is, being a YouTuber is what I've always wanted to be ever since I was a kid, and I have it. Even then, there are days where I'm just like, I don't want to stream today. I don't want to make a video today. I just want to chill. You know, there are times where you're just burned out and you don't want to have to drag your ass back to work to make a living to keep food on the table. But we live under a brutal capitalist system where if you don't go to work and you don't make some rich guy more money for pennies on the dollar of what you're making him, then you are going to live in a box and you are going to eat out of a dumpster. That is going to be your life if you don't go and make those pennies on a dollar for that big wealthy guy who has 5 houses that owns the company you work for. That's just kind of the reality of things. And he doesn't care if you get burned out. Your managers don't care if you get burned out. You don't get to take time off because you're burned out or that you're tired. And you know, I'm kind of privileged that I can make my own schedule, but even then I'm kind of, you know, YouTube doesn't care when I'm burned out, so I kind of have to work anyway. I can make my own schedule, but I basically force myself to work a lot more than I maybe should because YouTube forces me to. If I don't, then my channel will suffer. So I gotta, you know. So even YouTubers end up overworking and burning themselves out because even when you can make your own schedule, if you're not properly, you know, like compensated and your like ability to continue working is based on working unhealthy amounts of hours like YouTube incentivizes, then it doesn't matter if you can make your own schedule. You're still going to enforce an unhealthy work schedule on yourself, or much like if you don't go to work, you know, if you work a traditional job, you're just going to end up homeless. You're going to not have income. So, as you can imagine, when most Americans are in this position, most Americans fucking hate their jobs. They fucking hate working. And this means that even though employers are squeezing money out of every employee, paying pennies on the dollar for what their work is actually producing for the company and the higher-up managers and owners and whatnot, despite all that, workers really are not working at high efficiency. Like, American workers, despite working some of the hardest hours and being some of the most exhausted and overworked workers and burned out workers in all of the Western world, despite all of that, they are some of the lowest productivity workers. We work hard and unproductively in America, all the while scrounging together pennies trying to get by. One of the biggest problems right now is, despite the fact that Biden has seriously improved the economy, things you need to survive are expensive as fuck right now. Rent and food are expensive. And that's a big problem when people are tired from working 5 or 6 day work weeks. Shorter work weeks? Well, that's what we're about to get into. If it was possible for people to be more productive, to work less, and be less burnt out, you'd think that would be a good thing. But for a long time, just not wanting to change, not wanting to break with what we know works, what we know makes money, has made a lot of higher up like managers avoid a change that would be a mutually beneficial positive move. And that is doing the 4-day work week. Less work time can mean higher productivity, and it often does. And this is a CBS Saturday morning like segment done on a company that is now like experimenting with a 4-day work week model and talking about the effect it's had on their productivity and the happiness of their workers. And pretty much across the board, it's positive. Who would have thought? Not overworking your employees leads to higher productivity and happier workers. And yeah, you actually benefit more than if you were overworking them in the end. I know, it's crazy.
Many of us begin to enjoy a 3-day weekend in observance of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. This morning, we're going to visit one of the few companies in America where workers enjoy a 3-day weekend every week of the year. American workers of all ages overwhelmingly say they'd like to shift to a 4-day work week, with large portions willing to change jobs or even industries to get the perk. Dozens of companies have recently tested the idea, and
literally nobody is against the idea of a 4-day work week. Like, the people who voted no on this on both sides are the people who would have preferred a 3-day work week.
wanted to know what it takes to make it work.
Advanced RV outside Cleveland, Ohio is no hotbed of ivory tower theories on the future of work. No, it's the kind of place where when the boss forwarded an email about testing a 4-day week, the workers mostly rolled their eyes.
I read it and kind of chuckled a little bit, like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, that probably works great in Europe.
I was a little skeptical at first.
When I first heard that, I thought it was a joke.
No way is this going to work.
It's crazy how many Americans are like so brain poisoned with this idea of, yeah, that works in Europe. Like, oh, the most like you'll show an American a video of how like insanely amazing Switzerland's public rail systems are, and they'll be like, yeah, but that only works in a place like Switzerland, you know? And it's like, why? And they list a bunch of reasons. Like, okay, so objectively, none of those reasons, like all those reasons exist in Switzerland to the same degree. So there's literally no reason why we can't do it here if we just invested the money, and it would be beneficial. And all like economic experts say like free, available, good public transit would massively, massively benefit the American economy. Like everyone would benefit. That rising tide would raise all ships, right? But like so many people are like, nope, that can only work in Europe. Like somehow there's some magical force field that once you pass into America, the laws of physics work differently. So if you do a thing in Europe, the impact would be totally different in America. Now, if you can explain actual reasons why it wouldn't work in America, then you've got me there. Like with gun policy, for example, right? A big difference in America is there's way more guns than there are people by several magnitudes. So that's an actual example of why European gun policy might not work as well in America. But you hear this shit about like taxes or healthcare. It's like it never like no, it would absolutely work. It would work here. The reason it can't work here is America is hell on earth. Well, the reason why a lot of people believe this is that a lot of Americans here is the good sounding part of what's nice in Europe, right? Like they hear, oh, in Switzerland, you got like good transportation. It's the happiest country in the world, free healthcare, all that good stuff. But they don't hear about the fact that you're taxed very high and incomes are actually pretty low. But everything levels out in the end, and you actually end up living a pretty high quality of life there, and that's why it's so happy, even though all the policies that are suggested to happen here in America, you don't hear about happening in Switzerland because they aren't really relevant. People don't even think about the fact that wages are pretty low in Switzerland, or the fact that taxes are pretty high in Switzerland, because that's always how it's been. And it kind of like it kind of pays for itself by the fact that like you just go to the doctor, you just go take a train, you don't need to buy a car, you don't need to pay for car insurance or health insurance. Like it ends up paying itself off, and no one even thinks about it. But when you suggest the things necessary to achieve the type of standards that would make America on par with the happiest country in the world, people get upset. And then, of course, the right will try to come up with faux reasons for why America can't have that. Like, well, you see, Switzerland doesn't have brown people. That's why America can't do what Switzerland has done. And that's been their go-to lately, is the brown people make it so we can't make America good like Switzerland. That's like their go-to now.
Not a chance in Hades.
Advanced RV's 50 employees were already plenty busy making high-end, highly customized camper vans. Dave MacArthur handles metal fabrication. Brent Figuera...
And they're doing, like, physical work that also has an aspect of, like, thinking and thought behind it because it's assembly. This is the kind of work where, like, getting burned out makes you way less productive. And taking breaks, well-timed breaks, is going to lead to a massive increase in production. Like, have you ever, like, built something from IKEA and you try to do it all in one sitting, get frustrated, and it takes hours, but if you just start doing it and spend 15 minutes, then get up and take a break, regardless of how it's going, then come back 15 minutes later, you'll finish it in like 30 minutes easy. taking breaks makes you more productive with stuff like this. It's just scientifically proven.
Works on the electric. Chris Perko does quality control. Mike Griffiths oversees production. But it was owner Mike Neuendorfer who had read an article suggesting a radical change, working 4 days a week, just 8 hours a day, but still paying everyone their full salary while aiming to maintain their old 5-day productivity.
It would be a huge challenge, but if it worked, it would be the most significant thing I've ever done. Can you imagine giving 50 people a 3-day weekend? It's pretty amazing, every week.
So that was the attraction. You realized the impact this would have on people's lives.
I did, to some degree.
Did people think there was a catch at first? What was the reaction?
Yeah.
To some degree, he knows that this will lead to increase in productivity and he'll make more money in the end. This will lead to them being able to finish more RVs and get more projects done, and they're probably paid by the project, which means more projects will be done faster with a more productive schedule, and he'll make more money in the end. So yes, it's a mutually beneficial situation. He's not going to hurt his bottom line's not going to be hurt by this 3-day weekend thing.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a catch. In 2022, they joined 40 other North American companies in a 6-month trial organized by 4-Day Week Global. Now, the other companies in the trial were mostly places where everyone works on a laptop, small tech companies and nonprofits. So Advanced RV became a special kind of test case. Could a Rust Belt automotive company really implement a labor movement fantasy?
At first it was, well, we're all going to take this day off.
Labor movement fantasy. It's never been a fantasy. Other countries just do this. It just works. You've just been convinced it can't work by people who have a vested financial interest in convincing you this can't work.
I'll take that day. And it's like, okay, guys, wait a minute. It's not going to work like that.
The way it would work, they learned, was with a series of compromises and adjustments.
You know, one guy will take Monday, the other guy takes Friday.
We usually try to schedule any doctor's appointments or dentist appointments on our day off.
But now remember, for the trial to be a success, they still had to maintain
having a day
their
off.
old 5-day output.
Do we have enough inefficiencies in our day that we can eliminate to still get the same amount of work done?
It's saying there are 8 hours a week that, you know what, you don't even need to be here.
Mm-hmm. You know, the first big one was what meetings are we having every week that really aren't very useful for us.
You know, we changed meeting protocols, we changed processes, we changed communication protocols, and all of it is little things.
The biggest thing,
Everybody's focused.
we heard over and over,
It seems like we're getting more done in less time.
is motivation to make the schedule permanent.
It's like whenever I streamed, if I streamed 2 days a week, those 2 streams a week would be really fucking good. I would be energetic. I would be excited to stream. I would be bringing the best of the best topics, and only covering the best of the best topics. If I could get away with just streaming twice a week or once a week, the less I streamed, the more high quality each stream would be. It would just be a matter of how much can I get away with streaming less to make it so that it's higher quality when I do. I will be more excited. My heart will be in it more. I'll be able to source better topics. Even in my line of work, working less often leads to the times when I do work being higher quality work. And so in a job like this, it does not surprise me that with one less day of working that they have to worry about, another extra day of relaxing and getting rest and enjoying themselves, they might come into work a little excited to see their friends after that 3-day weekend, depending on how it's spread out. Maybe they have that 3-day weekend. They're like, it's been 3 days since I've seen my friends at work. I'm actually a little excited to come in and see them, I'm a little excited to get back to putting together RVs a little bit, I feel like if work was more of a non-life encompassing thing, to an extent, some people might feel a twinge of excitement for it. Even if it's their wage cage job, not their passion job or their career.
If people really want it, they can make it work, I think.
But people have to work to make it happen.
Yes, it ain't just gonna you ain't just gonna get that extra day off and not have to do anything to accomplish that.
Yeah, what is the trade? What do you have to give to get this?
Here, it was just like everybody working together. Everybody working a little extra. I was really skeptical about it. I didn't think it was gonna happen, but it really.
The thing is, though, the extra day off makes the working harder not really working harder. Like, you're still exerting the same amount of effort, or even less effort by the sound. You're exerting less effort, actually, and you're doing the same amount of work. So you're working harder, quote unquote, but the effort you're exerting is less. The output is higher.
It's amazed me that it's happened.
Yeah, no more working on Mondays. It would be awesome.
A survey after 6 months found 95% of workers in the 41 trial
got a time to
companies
start a garden?
wanted to keep the new schedule. And none of those companies said they'd go back to 5 days.
Yeah, those
at least
berries
for
are
now.
weed in my backyard.
So could this
They're
really be the
overtaking
future
everything.
of the American Monday? Walking the dog, working in the garage.
It's just great to have an extra day to be able to do that.
I've heard about the movement for a 4-day work week like for 10, 20 years now, but it's really gaining more momentum now.
Stephen Greenhouse was the longtime labor reporter for the New York Times.
Part of it is Americans seem more concerned about work-life balance than was the case 10 and 20.
So, something that's going to happen, inevitably, is that as America gets less and less religious, people are going to start to realize... So, a very popular idea in modern Christianity, which is, of course, a pretty prevalent religion in America, is that worldly possessions, worldly gains do not matter, and that you just need to, like, live a life that makes God happy, because you'll have eternity in heaven when you die, right? As long as you make God happy. So a lot of Americans have lived their lives like that, kind of content to work until death with the idea that they'll kind of be rewarded with eternity in paradise, right? But as more and more Americans become secular, the realization that this life is all that they have, and that as things are, their life might literally be work, 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 squeeze out a day off, and do what they can, and then get back to work literally forever until maybe they can retire, but they're probably not going to be able to, probably till they die. And then that's it. That's their life. A lot of people just won't stand for that. Gen Z, in fact, statistically has been found to have a staggering favorability towards experiences over physical things. Sounds surprising, right? Gen Z seems very vain, very materialistic. Like, they want cell phones and clothes and shoes and stuff, right? Like, they really like and Supreme clothes. Like, Gen Z is the least materialistic generation ever. Gen Z statistically favors traveling and experiences like experimenting with drugs, sexual freedom, traveling primarily, and spending time with friends, and like going out and eating and stuff like that. Gen Z values memories, creating happy memories, even at their own expense, over buying things to have. Because Gen Z, and every consecutive generation, is more and more secular. And that comes to a realization of, and I know it's cringe, YOLO. You only live once. That term came from well, really, like, what was it, millennials? Kind of, like when they were, like, younger-ish, like in their 20s back then. Like, YOLO came from, like, 2012 teenagers and young 20-somethings saying, like, oh, you only live once, you know? You got to live your life to the fullest. All right? And so I think as more and more people come to that realization and more generations popularize that idea, a lot of people are going to just not fucking stand for the state of things. They're really going to put their ballot where their mouth is when it comes to how they feel about the way that Americans are expected to live their lives overwhelmingly.
20, 30, 40 years ago. They don't want work controlling their lives, dictating their lives.
Yes,
they want
exactly.
to have control.
Major changes to the way we work, Greenhouse says, almost always follow decades of popular protest for change. But if the goal is a 32-hour work week, there may be a lesson in how we settled on a 40-hour work week just 100 years ago.
Really, the big, most important development was Henry Ford changed his factories from 9 hours a day to 8 hours a day.
So Ford makes this change, but that
Literally everyone who's it's all been copying Ford. Like, Ford proved that it would work to do a 5-hour work week and, like, still be productive. And then all these companies were like, oh, it's possible to like not have our workers like wanting to kill us all the time. Like we don't have to hire Pinkerton security forces to like keep our striking workers from killing us. If we just like give them 5 days a week, adopt the assembly line method, and like we can just kind of kill two birds with one stone. Like a lot of these money grubbing assholes would actually prefer for a mutually beneficial option if it saves them trouble and it results in less bullshit for them to deal with and it doesn't hurt their bottom line. And Henry Ford proved those three things could be done with the 40-hour work week, the 5 days a week with the assembly line factory like format, right? And so every business since Henry Ford has been copying has been copying like his model of running his factories. Just because he did it and did it well doesn't mean it's the best way to do things. We can improve.
That's just one company. Other places then felt pressure to follow.
Well, Ford at the time was arguably the nation's most prominent company. And I think a lot of other companies, a lot of other industries felt we better do what Henry did because Henry Ford is making $1 gazillion and is leading the way.
The 4-day movement is still waiting for its Henry Ford. Many of the most prominent companies of this era are famous for pushing employees to work more, not less. Even Mike Neuendorfer says this isn't for everyone.
I'm not evangelical about it. The structures of businesses are so different.
It worked here, he says, because only one shareholder had to agree, him. And the workers weren't just punching a...
It worked here because he just had to agree to it. But it wouldn't work in other companies because there'd be more money men at the top deciding whether or not they agree to it. That I like how the literal only drawback to why this couldn't work in other companies is the shareholders wouldn't agree to it. That's the drawback to it, to other companies doing this.
Clock, but
Amazing.
banding together to be more efficient. If they don't hit their goals, the 5-day schedule could come back. But he doesn't expect that. Too many people now are hooked on the pleasures of their endless long weekends. And Neuendorfer thinks eventually they'll have much more company.
Changes are accepted over time. The number of people who experience the joy and the freedom and the creativity of having a 3-day weekend is just huge. And it's going to be a driving force, I think. But I don't know how it's going to happen or how quickly it's going to happen.
Greenhouse pointed out one...
So yeah, pretty nice to hear about this because I think the pandemic and Gen Z entering the workforce is going to result in a really heavy push for work reform. It was already popular among millennials, but like Gen Z is very radically progressive and populist when it comes to the concept of work and economics. Socialism is more popular with Gen Z than any other generation, and that's by a lot. This generation entering the workforce in droves is going to mean a lot of pressure for reform of these workplaces that have, in the past, simply not had enough pressure to change. Boomers liked keeping things the way they are. But now, even among boomers, it seems like things are changing. Even a fair amount of Gen X and boomers lean towards, a 4-hour work week sounds kind of nice. Kind of a nice little hopium story I thought I'd cover.